Hi, welcome to Amherst Beyond the Common. I'm Kristen Patnode, and we are here at the Patch Hill Trails on Lineborough Road in town. We're going to be meeting with Will Lute, who is the chairman of the Amherst Heritage Commission, and he is going to be leading us on a hike up to the quarries to see what type of heritage items we can find that are relevant to the town. Hi, and welcome to Amherst Beyond the Common. I'm Kristen Patnode, and we are here at the Patch Hill Trails in town. And I'm here with Will Lute, who is the chairman of the Amherst Heritage Commission. Can you give us a little background as to why we are here today, Will?
Yeah, why we're here today, it's really pretty interesting. This past year, what we've had been doing is we're trying to digitize our historic resource survey that was done back in 2009, and we're putting this all online, and we want to go out and tour and see sites that are hidden treasures around Amherst. And this is actually one hidden treasure that we want to publicize to the public, because up until a couple of years ago, I didn't even know that we had quarries in Amherst. And it's real interesting to see the heritage and what went on in the late 19th and early 20th century here for quarries. So that's why we're here.
That's great. What types of hidden treasures do you think we will see today along the trails?
Well, since I've been here before, and I don't want to steal the thunder of the Gages, because they've done a lot of research. I think there's cranes that are up there. There's some, you'll see some cut stones today, and you'll just get a sense of the workmen and the workwomen that did the past quarrying here in Amherst, and how it was their lives and their livelihood. And I just think it's nice to get out and, go out for a nice stroll up the hill.
Saturday stroll.
Yes, Saturday stroll is right.
And why do you think that this trail is important to Amherst?
Oh, I think the partnership that the Heritage Commission has with the Conservation Commission is really important in the town. And we're geared for preservation and ensuring that the resources, both natural and man-made resources within town, are preserved for future generations. And we want to make sure that these Patch Hill Quarry findings and instruments that are still up there will be here for the next generation.
Great. Thank you very much, Will.
Yep.
We are here with Mike Cohen of the Amherst Conservation Commission. Mike, are you excited for the hike today?
Oh, absolutely. This is an opportunity for people in the town to come out and take advantage of the resources we have available in the community. The Conservation Commission is here to protect natural resources and to build trails and to help people understand the value of the natural resources that we have in the town. It's an opportunity, too, for others to get involved as volunteers to help out any way they can. As an example, I'm standing under a kiosk that was built by volunteers, and it's an example of how the town's people are willing to help each other in a community that values natural and open spaces.
Have you ever hiked these trails before, Mike?
I have not hiked Patch Hill before, but I've hiked other trails in the town. The quality of the trails are terrific. Many trails are managed and by volunteers called trail stewards who come out and work on the trails, keep them clean, help repair trails if they have erosion in them. And it's an opportunity for, again, people to both work on the trails and walk the trails. There are trails for people of all abilities, whether you are an avid hiker and want to take something that's more challenging, that's available, as well as something nice and easily and leisurely that you could take with your family and children of all ages. 8 to 80 trails are available for all of us.
And we're here today with James and Mary Gage. They've traveled up here from Massachusetts to come and hike the Patch Hill Trails with us. Can you give us some background as to why you're here and what these trails mean to you?
Oh, certainly. We were invited back up here in 2011 by Bill Wickham. At the time, he was at the Conservation Commission. He asked us to come out and consult on some of the quarries, to tell him something about the technology, and in particular a piece of equipment that's in the what they call the upper quarry that they weren't sure what it was. So we came out to look at it. We were able to successfully identify it, and the Conservation Commission was able to install a historic sign that's currently up there with that information. We have quite a background in New England quarrying, dating back to the early 2000s when we were out in the woods and discovered some quarry marks that we didn't understand, and we went and looked in all of the reference books, and there was nothing on it. So we started doing our own research and ended up writing a book called The Art of Splitting Stone that covers the early history of New England quarrying.
And James Gage is going to take us on a quick hike on the Patch Hill trails in town. James, could you give us a brief introduction to the trails?
Yes, I'd like to just read a brief history here. The Conservation Commission acquired this 8-acre parcel from the Smith family in 1988. It contains the remains of 2 small quarry operations. According to some oral history notes from the Smith family, the quarries were operated by John Thomas Smith. The Smith family acquired the property sometime after 1897. An air compressor found at the upper quarry dates to between 1899 and 1905. This gives us a reasonable date for when the 2 quarries were opened up. The physical evidence left behind suggests a small-scale commercial operation which likely served the local market for house cellars, stone posts, and stone walls. In 1897, the New Hampshire legislature developed a report related to a proposed local railroad line. And in the report, they noted that several unsuccessful attempts have been made both in Amherst and Bedford to develop quarries. Unfortunately, the mediocre quality of the stone and the thin layering of the outcrops were cited as problems for developing these into large-scale commercial operations. And at the upper quarry, we'll actually see an example of some of these problems that they were having. John Smith apparently did not have much success either in the quarry business. In 1909, he opened up a successful funeral home business over in Milford. During one of the 2 world wars, Smith attempted to sell the property, and an unscrupulous buyer put a deposit down and then went ahead and started removing metal equipment off of the quarries and selling for scrap metal. And then after he had done that, he backed out of the deal and got his money back, and it was a while later before the Smith family realized the deception that had taken place. So unfortunately, this is the extent of what we know about the quarry history. So the rest of this tour is going to focus on the physical evidence of the quarry technology and the operations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. James, could you tell us what we're looking at here?
I brought a selection of hand tools that would have been used in the quarries. These tools are the hand version of a very similar type of tool that would have been used in these quarries. As we're going to go up and see that we're going to actually see an air compressor still in place up in the top quarry, and they would have had that air compressor hooked up to a small mini jackhammer type tool, and these but a slightly different version of this that would have been mounted to it, but they would have been using very similar technology. This is what they call a plug drill. It has a single blade. And originally, when they were hand doing this before air compressors, they were taking a hammer like this and hitting it, turning it and hitting it until they drilled about a hole about 3.5 inches deep. You can imagine that's a lot of work.
Yes.
Try doing that for 10, 12 hours a day, and you're going to be exhausted. And you can understand why they were very excited when they went to compressed air drills and didn't have to hand drill the holes. The next technological innovation in drills is what they call a star drill. It has 2 bits, which means it could cut more rock with each blow of the hammer, and therefore the holes could be drilled faster. And this is probably most likely the technology they were employing here. So after the holes are drilled, they're going to set in each of the holes what they call a set of plug-in feathers. These little doodads, which are half round shims, are called the feathers. This, which is what we normally call a wedge, they call it a plug. So the two feathers go in the hole, and the plug goes in between them. And there'll be a whole line of holes, each set out about 6 inches apart. Each gets a set. And then the stonemason, or the quarryman, comes along and hits each one of them right down the row. And this is a case of finesse rather than brute strength. They're just going to keep going up and down the row, tapping them until they hear a cracking noise. And then they'll stick a crowbar in and just pull it apart. It's an amazingly simple piece of technology.
But a lot of work.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Jen.
You're welcome.
He showed you the drill. The holes are always, there's two different types of holes they use in quarrying. There's the short hole where they use the plug and feather with it, and then you have the blast hole where they use gunpowder with. This here is what they use the plug and feather with. He was, show you back there. Now the other hole, the one thing I wanted to show you here, which is a little bit interesting, not too many things up here have it, is what they call a dog hole. Get my grate over here. It's very shallow, just a little couple in here. That's what they used to pick up these big blocks of stone. What they had was, and I couldn't find it on the other end, so this is a piece of the original, a large piece that came out of the ground. They had like an old ice hook that came around. They had little things that hooked in here, and then it connected to a chain on a derrick, and it was hoisted, and they could hoist huge amounts of weight of stone by using these tiny dog holes. They'd have one on each end. Mm-hmm. So that's just...
You got closer, you can see they drilled a series of holes and then broke out the rock to create a square. We still haven't figured out exactly what this was used for. Some sort of piece of equipment was intended to be mounted on top of the block here. First time we've ever seen this, and we're not sure which piece of equipment. But it's a neat way of seeing how you would actually hollow out a piece of rock. And you can actually see the half-round marks from the drill coming in. We're going to take a look at that afterwards.
So would this be like in Quincy where they can be quite deep?
Yes.
So would you guess this is quite deep?
This is a small one. I wouldn't say it's much more than 10 or 20 feet deep. The big commercial ones like Quincy go 150, 200 feet down. Yeah. One of the reasons why these pit quarries became the norm for commercial operations is your better quality stone is deeper in the bedrock. What's up on the surface tends to be very fractured and poorer quality, and a lot of that, the commercial quarries just gets blasted off and dumped over the side, and they go after the good quality. The pit quarries were only made possible by crane technology prior to 1825. They really couldn't go very deep because they couldn't lift the blocks out of the quarry and put them up here to transport them either to the work site or to the quarry shed for processing. In 1825, they developed what they call the quarry derrick, and that sort of revolutionized the quarry industry, gave them the ability to lift 5, 10, 20-ton blocks of rock up out of a deep quarry and land them any place on a quarry site that they wanted. An operation like this probably had several guys at least. You need some guys down quarrying. There's generally somebody operating the derrick. Sometimes you'd hire somebody who was more skilled, who would handle actually trimming the stones, making those nice, neat blocks that you actually see in the downtown building. Surfacing the outside so you get a nice facade to it. The really large quarry operations employed full-time sculptors, mostly immigrants from Italy, who would do those beautiful sculptures for cemetery work, public monuments. Some of that decorative facade work you see on the major buildings. Your specifications you got from your builder, how many linear feet of rock you're going to need, how thick your foundation walls are. and they would cut it and deliver it. So some of these quarries would operate off and on, depending on how many contracts they had going. There's some moments when they had lull times, and they weren't active, and this, the workers were, out of work for a few weeks, for a month. A lot of times in midwinter they'd have to shut down because of icing conditions.
Yeah, when we photograph for documentation purposes, we use. Go ahead.
I just printed it off my printer and laminated it onto a piece of plastic. Blocks of inches on the bottom, centimeters at the top. And this is when you put it in a picture like this. You put it up close to the hole, or like this, and you get a rough idea when you're going to photograph it, the size of the hole or other object you have in the picture. So we found some artifacts. We could stick them on top here and put this next to it. So when somebody goes to look at your photograph, they have a sense for the actual size of the object. You get something a little bit bigger. This is just a neat little trick. This is just a folding ruler with a bit of spray paint in 1 foot intervals, and therefore you can stick it on top of the rock, and you get, again, you don't have to take the measurements while you're there. You can look at your photograph and know that this is
Turn it this way so we could see what you're demonstrating. Oh, okay.
3 feet long.
Got it.